Hi, so I wanted to do kind of a mini introduction to the interviews that I'm about to show you. I selected two people who are very close friends of mine and who are very into the hardcore scene. Our first interviewee is Andy, and she identifies with the straight edge lifestyle. And our second one, Bernie, does not identify with being straight edge. So I wanted to choose people who knew a lot about what they're talking about, but at the same time might have different outlooks on what it means to be straight edge and the impact of straight edge on the hardcore community as a whole. And I had some standardized questions for both of them prepared. So you're going to hear a lot of the same talking points, a lot of the same questions, a lot of the same answers, obviously because two people in the hardcore scene are bound to have very similar outlooks on what being straight edge is. However, you will see that both interviews kind of go in different directions at some points, so that's to provide extra insight into what their viewpoints are. Unfortunately, I could only do audio interviews due to our distance, and due to that, at some points, the audio quality kind of goes bad. So although it is audio only, the screen's going to be black for a lot of it. If there are any points where it's kind of hard to hear what they're going to say, I'm going to put on captions on screen. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys. Here are the interviews. Okay, so I'm here with Andy, my good friend, my bandmate, our bassist, our straight edge bassist. So, what does this symbol mean to you?
The symbol specifically was taken from bouncers at shows, Xing out underage people attending so that way they couldn't drink. And then it kind of was just adopted into representing the straight edge movement and not partaking in substances and alcohol.
Yeah, so I mean, I wrote a little bit about that, where like people who are outside of the scene and they'll see that, they'll kind of attribute it to that, like when you go to an event and you're underage and you can't drink, but a lot of people who are not familiar with the scene won't tie it to the scene. So that's why I want to interview someone who is a part of the hardcore scene, someone who's into punk music. Okay, so would you consider yourself straight edge? Why or why not?
I would, because I personally refrain from the use of substances and drugs, and I don't drink. But to me, I think that what makes a person straight edge or not is, at its core, the effort to be the best and most pure version of yourself. And I think that the straight edge movement inspires people to do that. And I think that a lot of people who are straight edge try to inspire others around them to be the best version of themselves that they can be.
Okay, so for those who are like listening in on this interview and aren't familiar with like the hardcore scene and the DIY ethos, how would you define the DIY ethos?
I think that in its simplest form, DIY is simply doing everything that you can by yourself. That way you kind of remove all outside forces in the process of making music or really making anything in terms of art. That way you can speak directly to your audience. And I think that as a result, you get the most purest form of yourself in doing that and in your art. Which is why I think it has such a huge connection to the straight edge movement and the straight edge community. Because that's really the only and the best way to do it if you want to be 100% authentic.
Okay, perfect. That kind of answers part of my next question, which is like, what value does the straight edge movement hold to the hardcore community as a whole? You kind of answered that a lot. You answered most of the question, but if you want to add any other points.
Yeah, I think that straight edge has its own little community and within the major hardcore community, where like I was saying before, everyone just pushes themselves and tries to inspire others to be the best version of themselves that they can be, which, there's a lot of different types of hardcore, and there's a lot of different backgrounds that come into the hardcore community, which is also what makes it so great. But I think that, to me, hardcore is about positivity, and it's about love, and it's about bringing people together. And I think that straight edge is a really great way of doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Already the hardcore community is a pretty, I wouldn't say tight-knit community, but it is a community with a lot of people with similar interests, similar outlooks on life, and the whole, like, straight edge, like, subset of that community ties it together even more. You see a lot of people, having, like, the X's on their hands. You even, you see the straight edge watches,
Yeah.
You see people on Instagram with like SE or SXE in their username, or like X blah 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 X, or in the band name. So I think it is kind of like the X is like a calling sign for like everyone else in that community, and I think it is like it's a really strong community with a really positive message, I guess, and everyone's trying to do better for themselves and for everyone else around them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, I just want to ask you, what is your overall opinion on like being straight edge?
I think it's great. I think that, it's gonna. There's a lot of people who hate on the straight edge movement, and they hate on the straight edge community, because they feel like it's people trying to control others, and saying that by partaking or not partaking, you're not being the best version of yourself, or you're being a bad person. But I think that there's a whole other side of straight edge too, where there's different layers to it, and some people consider themselves still straight edge, and they drink, or they partake in some other type of substance, and they don't partake in others. And because the reason for that is that, above all else, like I said, I think straight edge is about being the best version of yourself. And I think that that's kind of misunderstood. And I think that there's a lot more to it than necessarily just not drinking or not partaking in substances. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, and then we're gonna end this one with kind of a random question, but what are some of your favorite straight edge bands and or records?
You gotta say the ones that started it all. Minor Threat. The first 7 inches that they put out. They kind of started all of it, set the foundations. On top of that, Have Heart, Songs to Scream at the Sun, Gorilla Biscuits, Start Today, and Carry On, A Life Less Plagued. I'd say those are my favorite albums and bands.
Cool. All right. Thank you for your time, Andy.
Of course.
All right. So I'm here with Bernie, another friend of mine, also my bandmate. So for the first question, what does this symbol mean to you?
So personally, I'm not straight edge. I know symbol means a lot for people, and I can identify with what it means to other people in my own way, in my own personal way, which I think it's about, to me personally, I think it's about your individualistic freedom to decide to abstain from drugs and alcohol. And I think that's what I see it as. I don't see it. Yeah, that's how I see it as.
Okay, for sure. So you answered my next question, which is like, would you consider yourself straight edge, and why or why not? And you gave your reasons. But I guess we'll take a step back really quick, and I'll ask you, to you, what does being straight edge mean?
Yeah, it goes back to what I said, and the I think to me what it means is what I said. I think it's to have your own freedom to abstain from alcohol and other substances.
For sure. Okay, so you're saying it's about being individualistic, and I agree with that. I wrote a little bit about that, about the individualism in being straight edge and like being countercultural, and how that ties in with like the DIY ethos of the hardcore scene. So I'd like to hear like your opinion on that.
I think this is a little bit off track, but I think it's the original meaning of straight edge came from the straight edge song, obviously, by Minor Threat, and the person who wrote the song himself said that it was not meant to create like a sort of movement. It was not. Yeah, it's not. It was not. It was not meant to create like a movement where people look down on you or look at you a certain way, whether or not you are in the movement or not. I think the movement's roots are what I identify more with and what I support, which is like it came from like punk music, and it wasn't just about, I think in the start, it wasn't just about like abstaining from drugs and abstaining from alcohol and substances. I think it was about having that freedom, which ties in with the punk roots, with the movement's punk roots. Right. And yeah,
for sure. All right, so the next question I'm gonna ask, well, to preface, I guess everyone in the scene knows that the straight edge movement is kind of like a pillar of the hardcore community in a way. It's like, it's a small subset of the hardcore community, but it holds a lot of importance. I mean, everyone knows about it, and you see a lot of straight edge people. You see a lot of people with, you know, the X's on their hands and stuff. It's an important symbol. So with that, I want to ask you, what value does the straight edge movement hold to the hardcore community as a whole?
I think it holds people down to where hardcore came from, which is just it came. The movement itself came as a way for people to express their own freedom, and I think having a community within a community, as big as like hardcore I think it holds people together close to the original like ideas of the hardcore movement. I think it is really important that people stick together to like uphold the roots of the movement and to not forget where they came from. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
For sure. Like the straight edge movement came, like you said, from like the hardcore punk scene, and I mean the hardcore scene now comes from that. That is the root of both the straight edge movement and the hardcore scene, and we see a lot of the things from the original like punk scene carried over into our scene now. And
yeah,
that's why I wanted to focus on like it's tied to the DIY ethos, because that is so important to the hardcore community as a whole. So I guess now that I've asked you those questions, I just wanted to like wrap it up with what your overall opinion is of the movement.
It goes back to what I said about the where the name of the movement came from and where it originated. It was sort of, it came from a view of individualism, and it came from a very subjective view of abstaining, of holding your own. It wasn't just about abstaining and just about drugs. It was about having your own view on things. And I think if the movement holds true to that, then I see it as a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really enjoy the part where I feel like the movement goes off into other people looking down on you for doing what you choose to, when in reality the movement itself came. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. The movement itself came from personal freedom. Punk is a very it's punk comes from the origins of punk were personal freedom and just being contrarian to what was going on at the time, which was just the mass having one view of the world. And I think with straight edge, I think it's not fair to people to be able to tell them what to do. I think it is a very inherently, like, the message is positive, and I do agree with it. It's a great message. I just don't think it's fair to look down on other people for having their own personal freedom when the movement itself originated from personal freedom.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to say about it. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I agree that the movement is positive, but like you said, there are bad actors who kind of push themselves onto other people who don't necessarily identify with the straight edge lifestyle.
That's a minority. That's a minority.
Yeah.
I will say that it's not. There's a people in the movement, but the minority that does see it as a way to enact their own personal beliefs on other people is something that I don't agree with.
Yeah, I mean, straight edge and punk in itself is very, like we already went over, very individualistic and anti-establishment. So it's interesting to see those bad actors who are kind of putting themselves in like an authoritative position and looking down upon others.
Yeah.
It's very antithetical to the movement itself, which is really interesting.
And it's really strange because it's the people that the majority of it that are really, really into the punk scene, into the straight edge scene. The vast majority of them are great people. They don't do that, but it seems like the people who really hold themselves to like a high standard in within the punk and like straight edge, within the straight edge scene, the people that hold themselves and instill their beliefs so hard about the scene and stuff are usually the ones that push the narrative the most.
For sure.
That's what I see. But yeah.
For sure. All right, well, that was pretty much all I had to ask you, but I have one more question, and this was a question that Andy requested, but do you have any favorite like straight edge bands and or records?
I don't. I think it has to be Minor Threat. It has to be where it came from, because I like I've always talked about it. It came I like the view that they pushed because it was an original view. It wasn't what the other bands were doing because they twisted it. They twisted the words up. So that Minor Threat album for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
And I mean, like what this whole thing is about is how it's carried over into the modern day. So do you have like any modern day examples that you love?
Well, I there's some bands that I like from the straight edge movement, not necessarily because they're from the movement. I just like the way they sound. So I guess Balmora or Seraph.
Bro, Balmora broke edge, bro.
I saw that. That was hilarious. That was hilarious.
Yeah, and Clock Tower by extension.
Oh yeah, but Clock Tower too. Yeah.
So sad. All right, well, thank you for your time, bro.
Of course.